and welcome to this episode of Tiny Meeples Big Talk. So today, we did discuss in a previous episode how we thought a battle between a normal Imperial Star Destroyer from Star Wars and the USS Enterprise from Star Trek would go.
Yeah, we were a bit strict with ourselves then. We limited it just to the ship versus the ship. Yeah. But we're tired of being so restrained.
Yep, today it's unrelenting chaos. Do you see what I did there?
Some people will.
Some people will.
I don't get it.
Okay. So today our topic is, rather than a single ship-on-ship action, which actually sounds a bit wrong when I say it like that, a single ship-to-ship combat, we're going to instead discuss what would happen if the Galactic Empire from Star Wars, so the Stormtroopers, all of the Imperial fleet, Darth Vader and the Emperor himself, were to begin a war with the Imperium of Man. Now, for those unfamiliar with the Imperium of Man, that is the human empire from Warhammer 40K.
Yes.
And we're going to look at this in a few different aspects, really, that's going to come to light, I think. First off, we're going to be looking at what would happen with space battles. We're going to look at the infantry battles, a war of attrition, and also I think it's very important that we discuss the effect of the Sith and Darth Vader, Darth Sidious, and the God Emperor of Mankind.
You didn't specify all this when you said that we're going to be talking about it. It's just like the Empire versus the Imperium. That's the way you put it.
Yeah.
But now we have these 4 categories we need to do.
But we won't talk about them necessarily category by category, but those are some of the things that is going to come up in this discussion.
So basically, it's one galaxy versus another galaxy.
Yes, in all-out war. Now, I suppose a lot of people are going to be familiar with the Galactic Empire from Star Wars, so I don't think we need to explain too much about that. But I think perhaps a lot of people won't be familiar enough with the 40K universe. So just to give you a little bit of information about that, the Imperium of Man consists of many huge populations. There are trillions and trillions of people in the Empire, huge numbers of worlds. It spans an enormous, vast distance, and the entire empire is in a constant state of decay and warfare against non-human races like the Tyranids.
The Emperor is in a state of decay.
The Emperor himself is in a state of decay.
I think that's really cool.
And he is seen as an omnipotent, all-powerful being. He is an incredibly powerful psychic, isn't he?
Yes.
He has been on the Golden Throne for millennia.
I was just checking some of the stuff that I'd looked up before, but yeah, he was kind of like all these priests back on Earth had decided they were going to create this being, hadn't they? So they all kind of took poison at the same time, and then all the thousands of them got reincarnated as one guy who had such power that he could make himself immortal. And he became the emperor of this Empire of Mankind. So that's the kind of stuff they're dealing with there.
And just in case you haven't picked up on this yet, we are really going to... This is really a battle of the bad guys versus the bad guys. The Empire, everyone knows, is evil, cruel dictatorship. The Imperium of Man, in some ways, they're worse. I mean, we talk about the Galactic Empire blowing up Alderaan. Well, the Empire do far greater deeds. So, first of all, let's talk about the ship-to-ship combat. Richard, what are your thoughts on that? Have you given any thought to that?
Yes, I was looking up quite a lot about the Imperial Navy. No, not Imperium. The Imperium Navy, and their ships looked massive. Like the biggest one seemed to be 5 kilometers long, and there seemed to be a lot of them as well. I was just trying to look up the word again, but the Empire seemed to be divided up. The Imperial Navy seemed to be divided up into these 5 different sections. Each one had like an admiral over it, and it seemed like there would be a lot of very big ships that were kind of being controlled there, and I think that the Empire would really struggle. I think generally a lot of what I'm going to say is that the Imperium would wipe the floor with them, with the Empire. But there's going to obviously has to be a lot of talk about how exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, if the Empire had a fully operational Death Star, which sometimes they have a fully operational battle station, then they could just be taking out one of these massive ships like one at a time. And that would probably turn the tide of battle quite a lot.
I don't think it would, actually.
Yeah, but it just depends. Yeah, but that would just be in that one skirmish. But then they'd just be getting battered in other parts of the galaxy where the Death Star isn't.
I mean, obviously the we can't, be too detrimental about the Imperial Navy, because they have won great battles. They've dealt with rebels at times. They've gone through quite a lot. However, the Imperium are in a constant state of warfare against, really terrifying creatures like the Tyranids, the forces of Khorne, the Chaos. They've got the Necrons to deal with. There are so many more nasty things that the Imperium are constantly fighting against, and part of that means that they've got to have powerful fleets. Now, for example, let's take the Imperium and say, right, there's 20 chapters of Space Marines. Each one of those chapters has their own fleets. That's separate to the rest of the Imperial Navy. I think ships alone...
Internal politics.
Yeah, ships alone, I think the ships of the Imperium would outgun the Empire. They have greater resources. I'd say the only thing that the Imperial Navy of Star Wars would have over them is their hyperspeed. Now, for those unfamiliar,
run away.
Those unfamiliar with the Warhammer 40K universe, they use a different method of travel to the faster than light hyperspeed.
Use the Star Trek one.
They use a really terrifying version of the Star Trek one.
Yeah.
They have warp drive, but it's not warp drive like they have in Star Trek. For them, they are not using the warp drive, they are travelling through the warp. Now, once you go into the warp...
It's full of monsters, isn't
It's full of horrifying monsters. The forces of chaos are there, and unless they've got a good psyker to help navigate the ship, then the chances are they've got like a real strong chance that they're not going to come out of the warp alive. Not only that, but they don't know how long they're going to be in the warp. So they might think, right, we can go from this planet to this planet, but they could arrive, because it doesn't obey the normal laws of time, they could arrive like 1,000 years in the future. They don't know. But you do know that, every time you go into the warp, you stand a more than likely chance of being destroyed. But this is the thing about the Imperium. They know that that's incredibly dangerous. They know that their ships might not turn up. They know they might get destroyed. So they just send enough ships that it doesn't matter if half of them are destroyed. Right. It doesn't matter if only a third of them make it through to the other side. That's the kind of manpower and resources that the Imperium has.
It's quite nihilism as well.
It is, but one of the things about the Imperium is that every soldier in there knows that they're going to die at some point, because they're not like paid soldiers like in many of the Empire. They are conscripted, and they know they're going to live and die in uniform.
Yeah.
So, but also they believe that they've got this
party in the Empire, is it really?
But they are not afraid of their God Emperor in the way that stormtroopers would be afraid of Vader or the Emperor Palpatine.
Yeah, it's not rotting.
No, they just believe that he's this all-powerful creature that's watching over them. So they've got this like belief in this divine power that helps them with morale. But yeah, so it's a very different way of travelling for the two ships. However, that means that really a good navigator on an Imperial Star Destroyer can find his way 99% of the time, probably, if not more. So from that point of view, you have to give that aspect of the space battle to the Star Wars forces. However,
they know when they're going to get there.
Yeah. But other than that, I think every part of that space battle is going to go the way of the Imperium. And if they manage to get Space Marines onto the Imperial Star Destroyer, it's game over.
Yeah, well, we'll just talk about the infantry in a minute. But Yeah, the one I was thinking about was the Retribution class battleship, and that one just looks terrifying. And this chart that I've got here, I mean, it stops at 5 kilometers. It looks like it's a little bit longer than that, actually. But yeah, then one down from that, you've got the Dictator class cruiser, and then the Dauntless class light cruiser, but this Retribution one, I think that would just be laying waste to the Star Destroyers. I think it's bigger and it's got more firepower, but like I was saying, like one shot from the Death Star would kind of take out one of them at least, but they need to wait for it to recharge and then like fire on another one. So, but the trouble is, like, if the Imperium were to bring out a whole fleet into there, they could have like 70 of these things.
It's not just that though. I think the Imperium have ships as powerful as the Star Destroyer.
Mm-hmm.
And they have more than one that are fully operational for a much longer period than it takes a farm boy to kill.
Do you mean the Star Destroyer?
No, I mean the Death Star. They have like they've got their own like fleet, and the ships look so cool. They're very gothic looking, aren't they?
They look evil.
They do have massive ships that are bigger than anything that the Empire would have. They have ships. I mean, you think about, for example, the Emperor Palpatine built a space station specifically to be able to destroy a planet.
Yes.
The Imperium can do that with a single ship. So you look at that from that point of view, you think, well, actually, these guys don't need to build a specific planet killer. Most of their ships are planet killers if they have to be.
Yeah, it's weird.
So I do think that even if they had a fully functioning Death Star, I don't think it would make any difference to the tide of battle.
It's like in the old Star Trek when Kirk suddenly started talking about General Order 24, which is to like destroy the whole surface of a planet. Okay then, so the Constitution class can do that. And you realise it's for all intents and purposes, like all starships are pretty much overpowered, and I mean just generally having enough energy to be able to go at superluminal speeds, you're going to be able to destroy most things.
Yeah.
And yeah, I agree with you about the ships from the Imperium are definitely going to be able to destroy the Imperial ships, and I think the Empire would have to pull some pretty amazing feats of hyperspace to be able to even come close to that. I mean, and the Empire gets destroyed by Ewoks sometimes, so...
Well, this kind of takes me on to the point about the infantry.
Yeah, let's talk about infantry now.
Let's talk about how the fact that stormtroopers can get killed by basically little cuddly teddy bears.
Yeah,
right?
Because before I was thinking about how they can never shoot the heroes.
Yeah.
That's a classic thing of stormtroopers. But then, maybe in Rogue One, it became a little bit more, like, to the fore, the fact that even if you're not a Jedi, the Force can be with you, and the Rebels do talk about the Force being with them all the time, and there is a certain aspect of that helping you just be a little bit more lucky when you're in a battle. But what excuse is there for the Ewoks?
Yeah.
They all have the Force with them.
I mean, I think obviously there's going to be a narrative element to the fact that you know they've got to write it so that the heroes will win. So you've got to look at that from the stormtrooper side. But then there's no heroes really, unless you're Commissar Kane, on either side in this battle.
Yeah.
So let's looking at just the skill on skill. What we have seen is them getting defeated by Ewoks.
Yes.
On the other hand,
that was very demoralising to us.
Yeah. On the other hand, the Warhammer forces have to deal with things like Tyranids, which are massive, gigantic, bug-like creatures that attack in swarms and just tear everything to pieces. They can tear through armor and all sorts. They are not furry, they are scaly, and they are terrifying.
They don't look like teddy bears at all, then?
They look like the kind of teddy bear you'd give a child if you really hated that child and wanted the child to have nightmares.
Like your Cthulhu things?
Worse than that.
Do you think they would, if they met a princess, they would braid her hair for her randomly?
I think they just probably put acid in her face, tear her apart, and then eat what's left.
Yeah, they do
use
sound
biomass to make more of themselves.
Yeah, I think I'd rather face the Ewoks than
Yeah, I'd rather face the Ewoks in a battle. But the Tyranids are terrifying. Not only that, they've got the orcs. Now, the orcs aren't orcs like we see in Lord of the Rings. They're these big green massively, really incredibly strong things that
Actually,
walk around with incredibly powerful weapons and just want to attack and fight all the time.
They remind me of those. I can't remember what they're called, but those pig guys that work in Jabba the Hutt's palace.
Yeah. Actually, they look kind of like that. But imagine them, but
bigger, but with ships.
Yeah, and teleportation abilities.
Oh,
so they will come and attack things. Then you've got races like the Tau and the Eldar. The forces of the Imperium are used to dealing with stuff on a daily basis that would terrify probably any regiment in the 501st, for example.
Yeah.
As much as I love the 501st, because I love both of these franchises, but I'm just looking at it objectively. One has to deal with something from nightmares on a daily basis,
and the other one with teenagers.
Yeah. Well, by the point we encounter the Empire in the original trilogy, A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, most of the Empire is just a policing force, aren't they? They're just policing different sectors,
oppressing people,
not catching Han Solo, well, occasionally boarding Han Solo.
Yeah,
so
not finding the droids they're looking for.
Gary's having a bad day.
Yeah, Gary the
Stormtrooper. So that's what they're used to dealing with. They're not particularly that effective, and maybe that's one of the reasons why we've seen so much detriment from like the original clone troopers to the later forces that you see, because they've just not kept things up. But let's just say that I think the Imperial Guard, which is the normal human type soldiers, I think they could take the Stormtroopers, right?
Well, just look at them.
But then
they've got massive armor compared.
Well, no, you're thinking of the Space Marines. I'm thinking of like the normal sort of guy, the humans that go army guys who go around with the las guns and stuff.
Yeah.
They themselves could fight the Stormtroopers, but as you say, some Space Marines, some Space Marines get in there. Stormtroopers have got nothing to stop them.
No.
And even if there was a Sith there, if the Sith met something like a librarian from a Space Marine chapter, they would just, unless they were really high powered, tear them apart. I mean,
I was kind of thinking about that because I was thinking basically about a Sith versus the librarian, and I thought maybe the Sith would have an advantage because of the Force, because it's not just about the fighting skill, is it? A lot of it to do with the Force, and you don't really see that, but it has a big effect on what you can actually do. Whereas the librarian, they can use the warp, can't they, or something like that? So I think it would be. I don't think the Force would give you that much of an advantage, really.
I think you've got to think as well is if you're looking at this from an Empire versus Empire scale, how many Sith are they?
2.
Compared to
that was a really bad policy.
Yeah. Compared to how many Space Marines there are. So as soon as you put some Space Marines on the planet's going to fall. And if the Empire tried to launch an attack on a Imperium world, you got to think that most of the worlds of the Galactic Empire have like small, again, like police force type detachments, don't they? Whereas every world in the Imperium has its own army. They're ready, its own ships in its fleet usually. So
yeah, things are looking good for the Empire.
It seems like they're walking all over them. So then let's think about Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine.
Yeah, like Emperor Palpatine. Just lightning shooting out.
Because I think you've got to think about Emperor versus Emperor, because Emperor Palpatine is obviously very powerful, is a living weapon. But compared to the God Emperor of Mankind...
But he's dead.
Well, the God Emperor of Mankind can warp reality.
Yeah, he's kind of got this big mind thing that's not really attached to his body.
It's essentially him that's stopping the Chaos Gods from breaking through into the Imperium constantly. I mean, it does happen occasionally.
Those guys who play on Chaos in the old world.
Yep.
And they're pretty scary
not
guys.
Those guys specifically, because that Chaos in the old world is Warhammer Fantasy, not Warhammer 40K. But essentially, it's the same sort of things.
These guys of similar scariness.
Yes, like Slanesh. Khorne is the terrifying one, obviously, but and you don't want a chaos infestation.
No.
And
organised.
That would go through probably a galactic world in no time at all. I really don't think they've got anything that could stop that apart from an army of powerful Sith.
Which they don't have.
But they can send in the Space Marines and they can cleanse that world. So again, just showing the difference in power. But compared to the powers of Emperor Palpatine, the God Emperor of Mankind is so much more powerful. He wouldn't even probably notice. I mean, he's got armies of psychers, sanctioned psychers in the Imperium that work for him, that have different powers, different abilities, can do different things. Some of them are assassins, some of them are navigators, some of them are all sorts of different things. But they are there primarily to help fight the forces of chaos.
Yes.
And the God Emperor gets like thousands of them basically fed to him to keep him alive.
Yeah, that's what, I didn't quite get it at the time. Like, he's being kept alive at the expense of like thousands of people being sacrificed. So.
Yeah. So they're basically being fed to him to keep him alive.
So he's more evil than the Emperor, basically.
Yeah, he's much more evil than the Emperor, but he's also wields power on infinitely more powerful scale.
Evil pays off.
Yeah.
That's the message we're trying to get along here.
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit, I think these are two franchises that I absolutely love, and in many ways, I love Star Wars more than I love the Imperium, more than I love 40K. But I can't deny that on almost every level that I think of, I can't see the Galactic Empire surviving.
Well, luckily, they are. Even though we have just smashed them together, just in our imaginations just now, one of them is 40,000 years in the future in the Milky Way,
and one of them was a long, long time ago
in a galaxy far, far away. So they're separated by both time and space.
Yes.
So our empire is safe, I think, from the Imperium.
But as I say, you got to think about this. I mean, and I'd also like to bring out the point. I was thinking about this last night. Every Star Wars film that Luke Skywalker's been in, he's had to be saved at the end.
Yeah.
Hasn't he?
Well, he got saved by Han in the first one, didn't he?
He got saved by
Leia and Lando and everybody that was driving the Millennium Falcon at the end when he was hanging off the bottom of that thing. And then in the third one, he got saved by Darth Vader. And then in episode 7, I suppose, Rey went and gave him his lightsaber at least.
I like to think she's reaching out. She's saving him on an emotional level.
Well, he was just about to jump off that.
And I mean, to be fair, it wasn't all in his power. But in Revenge of the Sith, he was saved by Obi-Wan by taking him away. So
I forgot about him.
He was a helpless baby. He was a helpless baby. Yeah. But consistently, every film that Luke Skywalker's been in, he's had to be saved at the end. That said, I am a huge fan of Mark Hamill and a huge fan of Luke Skywalker.
Well, what was your point there?
I don't know. It's just a random thought that these are the kind of random things I was thinking about. But
I think that's a good aspect of it, though, because it's like teamwork, isn't it? It's like you can't say that he's just the hero that's been saving them all, like defeating the Empire on his own. Did it with his friends, and that's nicer.
So I think we're both pretty clear on the end of this one. The Galactic Empire versus the Imperium of Man. It looks like the Imperium stomps this, doesn't it?
Yeah, they did. I wish it had been closer, actually, so there'd be a bit more of a discussion about it. But...
Well, funnily enough, when we were thinking about the Star Wars Star Destroyer versus the Enterprise, it was really difficult to know how to call it because it was so close. Everything I looked at pretty much, the one advantage that I thought that the Empire had was that they'd be able to run away better in their ships.
Yeah.
That is literally it. Every other thing that I look at, the more I think about it, whether it's the equipment for the ground troops, I mean, we've not talked about like the big vehicles like the Walkers and the AT-ATs, but then everything that they have, the Imperium has something bigger and badder when you look at it. And there's just nothing I can see here.
Yeah, I was wondering about the AT-ATs, but then I remembered some of the things that Matt's got in this cabinet for the Imperium. They're pretty bad vehicles. However we break this down, it looks like the Imperium stomps. Luke Skywalker needs to be saved at the end of every film. But he's the enemy of the Empire, so who cares?
Yeah, and I love Star Wars.
I love Star Wars too. I don't know much about Warhammer apart from all the research that I've been doing for this, and just generally over the last few years, I've kind of absorbed a lot of information about it. I mean,
from 40K games that we've played.
And sometimes to plan these podcasts, we'll go to Warhammer World for a drink, and that's always very enlightening. But yeah, I like the idea of the Imperium, but I I really didn't like the fact that they would stomp all over the Empire, but I just have to go with the facts, really.
Yeah, because you're more of a Star Wars fan. But I would say, if I had to choose one of these two universes to live in, I would choose the Galactic Empire.
Oh yeah,
hands down. I mean,
definitely.
Who wants to live in the Warhammer 40K universe? You don't have to be psychopathic.
Even if you're under the Empire, like Jin said, if you're under the Empire flag, it doesn't matter if you don't look up.
Yeah.
So
there we go. Imperium of Man stumps.
Everybody be scared.
Farewell, Quester. To find out about other productions by the Meddlesome Meeples, then check out our channel or rendezvous with us at meddlesomemeeples.com. Until next time, Quester, farewell and keep thine axe sharp.